Thank you so much for everyone for joining the call today. I just wanted to go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Christy Thompson. I am the Sales and Marketing Director here at BIS. And today we're going to be talking about how to properly protect your organization from active shooters, robbers, and cyber criminals. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Phillip Long. He is the CEO of BIS. He is also a certified information system security professional. He's the owner of 5+ businesses in the Gulf Coast area, and he's worked in the IT industry for over 15 years. And he has a very special guest today. So I'm going to go ahead and let him take it from here. Phillip, you with us? Phillip, just one moment. Seems like we may be having some technical difficulties.
Christy, this is David Wilson. Can you hear me okay?
Hey, David. Yes, we can. So I don't know if while Phillip is waiting to join the call, if I can go ahead and introduce you then. So our very special guest today is David Wilson. He is the Foley Police Chief. David, why don't you tell us just a little bit more about yourself?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you for having me today, and I hope what we talk about today will help businesses. We probably have a variety of businesses listening, but I'd first like to congratulate Phillip. He is a brand new grandfather again. They just had their second grandchild yesterday, so I'm not sure what he's going by, grandpa or grandfather, but that's good stuff. So yeah, I've been a cop for over 30 years and have seen a lot of things. Some of the experiences I'll share with you come from a total of 4 agencies. I was an Air Force cop, a Texas cop, I was a cop in Daphne, and then a cop, now still a cop in Foley, a police chief in Foley. So some of the things I'll talk about, I've seen over all of those experiences for over 30 years.
Absolutely. And we see here that you have an agency of about 64 cops and 95 employees total.
Yes, I had brown hair when I got here.
And so you're a graduate of the 200th session of the FBI National Academy, NTOA's SWAT Commander School, Mobile Police Department SWAT School, U.S. Air Force Police Academy, Alabama A-Post certification in 1990, Leadership Baldwin County, and then you've just started a Leadership Legacy, is that right?
Yeah, I do have a side business where I teach leadership to agencies, legacy leadership services. Yes.
Gotcha. Well, let's go ahead and certified John Maxwell leadership team coach as well. So let's go ahead and get this kicked off.
Hey, Christy, can you guys hear me now?
We
We can now.
gotcha.
Yes.
I'm gonna turn it over to you now, Phillip.
All right, well, thank you. I very much apologize. I happen to be on the road today. I would like to say thank you so much for Chief Wilson joining us, and really the city of Foley for taking this time. You know, we don't get a week that goes by that we don't see something in law enforcement. These guys, taking a hit for defending us. So, want to appreciate all the law enforcement officers, and especially David today for spending some time with us. And we'll remember the city of Foley, because this is really something that he's doing just to help out the community. Want to jump right in, David. Got some few more things here. David's got a long list of credentials, been doing this a long time, but I want to talk about something that it's very much on the mind of people today, is this active shooter thing. And, these bad actors are jumping out, and they're cowardly acts. They're trying to hit, trying to hit the soft targets. And so talk to us a minute about what you're seeing from a law enforcement situation on active shooters.
Well, it's something that it's the worst thing that we can think of happening in one day, and I'll never forget the day, though we train and train and train for this, and we pray to the good Lord that it will never happen to us. I still remember how surreal it was when me and 99 other officers responded to the Alberta elementary school for indeed we did have an active shooter there. I remember how surreal that was, that, you know, you train for it, and you hope it never happens. And then we were responding, and just how surreal that was, that this is really happening. So your training kicks in. So it's something that it's on the news, seems like every other day. You kind of get used to hearing it, but it's still shocking when you still hear it. You know what I mean? It's we're hearing it more and more, and unfortunately there's copycats out there. We study active shooters and try to learn from them, but they also copycat the most recent shooting, especially if it's a large, I'll speak bluntly with you today, especially if it's a large body count or large casualty rate. There's folks out there that are copycatting that. So it's something that we have to deal with in the business community, anywhere USA, really.
Yeah. You know, and one thing that I want to get to about, you know, all the things that we're talking about today really is, you know, not only just, you know, identifying the threat, but what should we do? I know that one of the things that in law enforcement you guys teach is run, hide, fight. Would you take us through what that looks like?
Yes. And this is something you really have three choices. If you unfortunately are involved in a active shooter situation, and when I say active shooter, the term we use nowadays is active threat instead of active shooter, because you very well, and we've had examples of this around the nation, where it's not necessarily a gun, it's a rifle, it's a knife or a machete or something crazy like that. So the term we use now is active threat, but the common term everyone uses is active shooter. So you really have three choices: run, hide, or fight. And I want to talk about those, but I want to tell you that's a valuable resource. You can get it on the internet. It's about 8 to 10 minutes long. It's it's probably the best I've seen that covers just about any business that may be listening. I think we have quite a few people listening from the screen I'm looking at. So there's probably a variety of businesses there, but it's the best one that covers what your three choices are. And I want to say, in your mind, if you think that an active shooter is going to sound like a loud gun or rifle going off next to you like you would think it would be, well, if it's next to you or in the same room, unfortunately, yeah, you're going to hear that. But the first thing I want to tell you is, if you hear, it's not going to sound like that. More than likely, if it's in the building a good ways from you, you're still in the threat area. But what I want to communicate to you is, it may sound like firecrackers. It may sound like a faint pop, pop, pop. And you still need to, nowadays, you need to take action. And if one of your first choices, if you're a good ways away from it, and you have time, is to run. And or even if you're close by, if you have a way out, the best thing you could do is run and get out of the threat area. Unfortunately, if you cannot get out and you are caught or trapped in, so to speak, then you need to hide. And what that looks like is you need to take there's two terms we have: cover and concealment. Concealment is like hiding behind bushes. You can't be seen, but a bush is not going to stop a bullet. So cover is both concealment, you can't be seen, and you have a level of protection. So we want you to hide behind something large that would actually stop a bullet. But it may be as simple as you locking the door of the office that you're in, pushing up something. You and some other people push up something heavy against the door so he can't get in. If he does try to kick it in, even with it being locked, you turn the lights off, and then you get away from the door. And again, try to hide behind something or hide in something that'll protect you. And then unfortunately, the other area is fight. We've seen too many times on the news and even documentaries of these active shooters afterwards that people, they hid, and then when the gunman came in, there's 20 or 30 people in there, and he starts shooting people. When what we want you to do is those 20 or 30 people attack him. And that's the third element of that. You have run, hide, fight. The third element is, if he's coming anyway and there's nothing you can do to stop, he's coming in, you can't lock the door or whatever, then you look around the room and y'all pick up items that can be used as a weapon, and you attack him when he comes in. And it can be, if you got 4 guys, 2 with office chairs, one with I've always said a flagpole or something, and a fire hydrant or something, whatever you can pick up to use as a weapon. That's what is recommended by police. That's what's recommended in this Run, Hide, Fight video that I, again, want the listeners to go and look at and actually use it for training, because the number one thing we have that we can do is increase our knowledge of this. When people are facing a threat like that, they either fight, flight, or freeze, and you don't want to freeze. So if you train your people ahead of time to do one of these three things, that's what we want you to do. So watch this training video, make it a training video for your employees. Yeah. It's not an easy thing to watch, but just get them to watch it for training purposes.
Yeah, we'll get the link out to everyone on the call today for sure, so that they can view that. So you're saying that you need to do some mock trials, go through the exercises with your staff, and beforehand.
Yeah, at a minimum, watch this video so they have that. And maybe you can even come up with some questions if you want for an internal training document or a training exercise. But sure, run through some scenarios to take it to the next level. In fact, if you call your local police departments, they probably will help you in this area. And the other thing I want to emphasize on an active shooter, we need the main thing you can do is if you can survive the active shooter for 2 to 3 minutes, and that's eternity when you've got a person in your building shooting people. But we need 2 to 3 minutes to get there, and that's still a pretty good response time. But a lot of these active shooters, their highest casualty rate is within that time frame. So if you can harden your facility, if you can make it harder. Now, some of the businesses listening, I'm sure, are open to the public, just generally open to the public. And but some other ones you may have, maybe set up where you have where it's just not a walk-in type situation. You need an appointment and you get buzzed in. But if you can take measures to delay him or hold him up or make it harder for him to get to you within those first 2 to 3 minutes, that's what we need, and that's what you need to survive. Because when we get there, we're going straight to the shooter. That's what we're trained to do. That's what we practice doing. That's what we did at the Alberta school. That's what we do in our training exercises. I know unfortunately at the Parkland school, there was a school resource officer who did not do that, and that's not what he wasn't supposed to do that. I don't really want to talk about that. I didn't care for how that. Nobody liked how that was handled. But police officers everywhere across this nation are trained to respond directly to the threat area. And so if you've got wounded people, if this guy has shot and wounded people, those first responders, and this is covered in that training tape, Run, Hide, Fight, the first responders, when they get there, they're not administering first aid to wounded people, even our own. We got downed officers. Our number one priority is to go directly to the threat and stop the threat. And once we stop the threat, we'll get help to everybody. But we're not stopping to help anybody, and that's explained in that training tape so that it's not a shock to you that you know firsthand we've got a mission here.
Yeah, take out the threat, absolutely. And I have noticed as of late, a couple of incidents happened where people have fought, and it has really, I believe, mitigated the risk for the others. That, I know the lady that was killed out at the synagogue in California, she saved her rabbi ultimately, and possibly a whole lot of other people. Sadly, her life was lost, but I think that these guys that, in my mind, I see them as really, weak individuals, ultimately preying on soft targets. And if we can disrupt them, it seems to, in a fight situation, and again, only if needed, but that seems to be a way that, that's an effective measure to limit the loss.
Yeah, if you've got 15 people that attack a gunman, he's going to get some. But he's not going to get all. If you have weapons that you picked up items to use as weapons, you'll disable him, and he'll get some, but not all. And that's a far better chance for survival than what we've seen in, like you just said, what we've seen in the earlier days with the guy coming in and just shooting and killing a whole bunch of people. So that is starting to, this training, this topic is starting to get out there.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Well, let's keep moving on here, and let's look about something I've never been involved in, never seen happen, but we talked about what to do if a robbery's gone bad. Tell me, what does that mean? Fill us in on what you've seen.
Well, you can see where folks come in and they intend to just rob you of your money, depending on what business you are, and then something goes wrong, and then it could turn into a where they get hemmed up, they panic, they start taking hostages. You can take a robbery scene and it can turn into a hostage scene pretty quick. Generally with robberies, one of the best things that you could do again is harden your facility. If you're not open to the public, if you are open to the public, there's still things you can do. And one of the number one things you can do is train your staff. We call it anti-robbery procedures. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to stop a robbery, but sometimes it does. But if you can train your staff ahead of time, if they have a gun pointed at them, that's a very scary thing. I've seen it my whole career where there are some employees, they quit the next day, they quit that same day, and other employees, they get through it. But they're being robbed. You try to tell them ahead of time and train with them ahead of time to try to keep calm, do what the guy says. No amount of money is worth that employee losing their life because they didn't give the robber what he was asking for. But they're, hardening of your facilities, or at a minimum, making it the best you can have it, is, you've got panic buttons, you've got higher grade security cameras than what we're seeing. Every once in a while we'll see a pretty good high grade, or we're seeing this more often, which is a good thing. We're seeing pretty good high grade security cameras, but we still are seeing security cameras that are, okay, when we're looking at it as a police department or the first responding officers, we're playing back a robbery tape, and yeah, we could tell this was a light-skinned human being. It was a blurry image, And then the sad thing about that, you can also see where we have the technology to send space vehicles to Mars, and the technology is so sharp that those cameras sitting on a space device on the planet Mars you can see how many pebbles are on the ground, a quarter of a mile away. So we've got the technology, but then you've got like a bank camera that you can barely tell it's a human being. So those robbers know when you've got good cameras or not, and sometimes they're so reckless with it, they come in to rob you because you have pretty sorry cameras, and they don't even bother covering up, and it's just hard to make them out. So one of the big things you can do on the front end is train your employees what to do in a robbery, and mainly don't resist them. Give them the money they're wanting. Do exactly what they're telling you to do, because these folks are dangerous, and it can go wrong where they can turn around and shoot people for not doing what they want done. And
let me ask you something. Let me ask you a question about what is your take? And I know that this is a touchy subject. Should you arm your employees? Should they be armed? Should you, of course, train them and all that? Is that a good thing normally, or is that a bad thing?
I had a feeling you were going to ask me a controversial question like that.
Yeah, I mean,
no, it is. It's a very personal question. There are feelings on it that run deep on both sides, but I will tell you, at the end of the day, just like I told you that we need 2 to 3 minutes to get to you to stop this threat. The only thing that will stop a bad person with a gun is a good person with a gun. And you've seen on the news or on the internet, Facebook and such, where a citizen that's armed is in there concealed carry. He's in there concealed carry, and he pulls out his weapon and he stops a robbery by shooting a guy. That happens, and that ended the robbery. And so I personally do favor good people that have met, that went through checks and such, and have a weapons permit and all that. I'm a big proponent of that, of lawful, good citizens with weapons that can help during situations like that. So yeah, that's. But some companies have strong policies on that. So it's really up to the business.
Sure, absolutely. All right, well, let's keep moving. What about just some good tips on how to properly secure your office? You know, just recently we went in and we put access control systems in. Really, you know, I think we had a dual reason. We had two primary reasons. One, of course, is the security of our employees, but also, you know, we house a lot of client data. So we were, you know, concerned about who had access to what. So we put in an access control system. But you know, some people aren't going to spend the money, and some people, like you said, you know, they're publicly, you know, they own a, you know, a shoe store, or they have a retail store. You know, they can't have people buzzing in and out with access cards, so they'd go out of business. Tell us some things that they can do. And you mentioned cameras already, and not just getting the low-end camera. Get something that you could, you know, actually identify a person. I guess proper placement of that camera so that you could, you know, get a face shot of everybody who walked in the store. But what are some other, you know, things from a security perspective that you would recommend a business to have?
That's a great question, and it's good stuff out there, because what you're basically looking at is after you close, your business gets burglarized, and say you do have alarm doors, but they came through the windows. So you have alarm doors and alarm windows for glass breakage alarms, but they came through the roof. And I've seen all of that over the years. So you get motion detectors just for you have alarm windows and doors, then you have motion detectors facing those doors and windows, but then they break into the business next to you and come through your adjoining wall, and they totally skip the precautions the measures you have in place. So this is what they do. They're good at this stuff. They'll come in acting like a customer, and they're casing out your place. They're looking for what you have. And basically, I just gave you that answer. Is not too long ago, I went to a business that was burglarized, and and my detectives had already worked the crime scene. So I went in this was actually a friend of mine, and I wanted to see what type of setup he had, if they had made it all the way in. And he had a perfect setup. He had the alarmed entrance and exit ways, glass breakage, and then he had motion detectors up and down the hallways. So if you came in the roof, or whichever way you came in to this man's business, you would have set off motion detectors. So my point is, if you're going to do it, go ahead and do it all the way, because these guys are good. Sometimes you may get somebody on drugs that's just doing a quick break-in, and they get real reckless on it. But other times, especially when they're doing these roof jobs, I've seen it in my career where they may take a few hours to get in through a roof, and then drop down and do a safe job where they're breaking into the safe. They're there for a few hours. And so they usually have lookouts on the roof, and I'm almost positive, from my opinion of working those, when you see a man, someone's stood on the roof behind a sign smoking probably 7 or 8 cigarettes, he more than likely had a weapon, because he was the lookout and probably would have shot the police if they'd have rolled up on him. But I said that to say this, that these some of these are just people who are on drugs that can hit you real carelessly. Other ones are professional criminals who take some time to try to circumvent what you've got in place. So if you're going to do it, go ahead. If you're going to put up an alarm on your windows and your doors, go ahead and do it good, and get your motion detectors, and spend a little bit of extra money to get that done, so that you can properly secure your office, because I've seen them come in all kind of different ways over the years.
Yeah. Let me ask you, of course, lighting, I guess, is another important factor. Keeping your bushes trimmed down would be another factor. I know that on my office, we had some hedges that we let grow up tall, and someone showed up one morning, somebody was sleeping behind one of them. I immediately went and I took my tractor and pulled them all out and put some low stuff in. But I guess that's another one. But do and again, I don't. I know who would you have? It sounded to me like what you were saying is you need to have an assessment of what you got. And that's not anything I do per se. I know that's not anything that really the PD is going to do for you. But I guess would you get your alarm company, or maybe even get another alarm company, a competitor, to come in and kind of take a second opinion of what you have? Would you recommend that?
Well, sometimes there are some police departments that will come out and help you. In fact, some of your larger cities, when you go to build a new business, you have to, part of your check. There are many checklists that you guys know if you've ever built a business in the city. But some cities in the United States, there's a checkoff point where you've got to go see the police department and you got to run your design through the police department so they can sign off on the very things you just said, Philip. With there's no design or no landscaping design that's going to make it easy for criminals to hide behind, jump out. You can have all these great security measures in place with cards to get in, swipe and get in, which can be defeated when a bad guy is laying in the bushes and simply jumps up and takes control of your employee and comes in that way. So yeah, it's called it's something to the effect of crime prevention through design, business design, and how you design your business. It includes landscape, it includes lighting, yeah, all of the. And you had previously told me you ripped out those bushes, but I didn't know you did it for crime prevention purposes, which is great. But yeah,
Well, it was
all
a lady.
these companies can come check
Scared
all
her
that out
to
and help you.
death. Yeah, there was a lady, that happened, and it scared her to death. The person wasn't. I think the person was basically drunk and passed out. It was not. I don't think a true threat, but you just never know. And so, really, I think kind of a takeaway there would be either pay somebody, or maybe call your police and see if they do that, or even just take a look at your operation with a fresh set of eyes. Sometimes we get very complacent. And, as business owners, I read a book. It's called Extreme Ownership. And, I took a lot of that to heart about, who I'm supposed to be taking care of. And you need to do your due diligence and practice due care. And I think as business owners, we got to protect our staff, and we got to protect our clients, and I think that's really important. So we'll kind of have a takeaway. We may want to do an assessment to see where we are, and even if it's a self-assessment, we'll keep moving.
Your local police department, a lot of your police departments can help you on that. And if they're not set up for that, I know the alarm companies will.
Yeah. Another topic at hand here was, cybersecurity tips from police officers' perspective. I'm certain, of course, I'm not in law enforcement or anything. I think sometimes, especially from a cybersecurity standpoint, I see people, they're posting, the world's gone social, and of course, I own a marketing company, so I actually like that. But in one regard, I see people posting, where they are and what they're doing. And in a way, I'm not a bad guy, but if I was a bad guy, it might give me some tips on how to, to do robbery, which I'm sure, probably statistically from a crime standpoint, robbery is a pretty high, somebody, their hope would be that no one would be home and they could kind of track that on social media and then go out and hopefully have just a quick time to go, pick up some items that they could sell and make some money. So what are some other things that a police officer sees from a cybersecurity standpoint?
Well, I will tell you that well, first of all, let me say that the recommendations that I'll give here, or that any law enforcement agency will give you, it's just a guide, and it really is not a substitute for consulting trained cybersecurity professionals. I will tell you that many excellent private companies, as well as the federal government and the federal, state, and local law enforcement, have all participated in combating these cyber crimes. But right when you think you have it figured out, these cyber criminals are constantly changing. In fact, we don't have enough time in this program to cover just the number of ways they can try to get into your business. You know, their goal is to get money from you, or get data from you. And if that's your employees or your clients' data, they can do a lot of harm with that to those clients individually, which will also affect your business. So so businesses big and small are at risk from cyber attacks. You know, you see it on a day-to-day basis where just on Facebook alone, you'll see someone take over or duplicate one of your friends' Facebook account, and they start hitting you up for money and that kind of thing. So you know, you've got but these cyber attacks can be something as simple as that, or it can be as grave as some type of attack or intrusion or breach into your company's records management system. Or it can be as serious as some type of international attack against like a multi-billionaire corporation or federal government itself. So you see this stuff on the news. So there's about 5 areas that really they come at us. It's being one of the first ones that will hit home with the people listening. It's being compromised within your business from a bad employee. And if it's not a bad employee, which you need to do good, careful hiring. And I do hear from the businesses on how hard it is to get good employees nowadays. I understand that, but you can get a bad employee in your mix, and he can do damage in that area, or a careless employee. And this can come from your own internal staff, or it can come from your external staff, or even some type of service provider that comes into your organization for legitimate business means. The second one we have is we got hacker type organizations. You've got terrorist organizations, organized crimes, and then some international sources. So step one for me, though there are many resources and recommendations that are out there, again, nothing can substitute that of a consulting trained cybersecurity professional. So for me personally, my recommendation is, hey man, don't reinvent the wheel. We've got folks that study this stuff day in, day out, and we're constantly fighting it. And they, a lot of times they're a step ahead of us. Sometimes we get a step ahead of them, but it is hard to stay ahead of them. So what can you do? What can you do as a business? Well, first of all, security awareness training is huge. You've got to do some type of security awareness training to your employees. Other things you can do is 2-factor authentication, where it takes you 2 steps for a legitimate employee to get into your system. You've got email filtering. We also recommend some type of penetration test. When you think you've got your A game going on your cyber security, put it to the test. You've got backup systems, risk assessment. We talked about that a little bit a minute ago. You really need to do some type of risk assessment. Now, I recommend, even if you have an IT section, and I'm not trying to hurt feelings with that, even the IT section, sometimes they're real good at what they do, but they may need to be put to the test as well with a third party that comes in. You need to have proper controls. You need to have security policies, and those security policies, not only they cannot be an SOP, or excuse me, they can't be just security policy that's sitting in an SOP manual stuck on the desk, on your desk or in a shelf collecting dust. You actually need to use them and train your people on them. Those should establish security roles and responsibilities among your people that work for you. You really need a social media policy and an internet usage policy nowadays. Just a few other things. IT providers must be reminded of the enforcement of your policies once you get those in place. Your system users, the same thing. They need to be reminded, and you just need to do audits. You need to have audits brought in. You need a secure VPN, and that's always helpful. You've got antivirus and firewalls, and there's a host of other things we could talk about that would probably take another hour to go through. But if all that fails, you've got to have a disaster recovery plan that gets you back on your feet. These cyber criminals are always finding ways to infiltrate our systems, and so there are a lot of resources out there. Department of Homeland Security has great resources that you can get on the internet. But again, you need some professionals. I recommend you get professionals to come in and help you. The first step, though, your first step in combating this stuff is getting your employees trained, because a lack of training is step number one.
95% of threats happen from people. They hack people because people are easier to hack than firewalls. But one thing that you didn't mention, man, I'm fixing to hire you, because that was almost everything I could think of, but you missed one, and it's really important. Is a cyber liability policy. It's insurance. Cyber liability insurance is something I'm actually literally, I'm still on the Mississippi Gulf Coast right now. I had a big appointment that I needed to make, so I just went in and took this on the road. But the guy I met with, you wouldn't believe it, but he did not know that he needed a cyber liability policy. And I'm going to speak on behalf of an insurance company for a second, because if we have our errors and omissions insurance, our professional liability insurance, these insurances, when they were made, the cyber threat wasn't even a reality. They didn't even know to be protecting for that. So I have a particular client that had a employee, really it was more through a human, that it was outside the office, but they spoke of one of their patients, and had a mess on his hands, and he didn't have cyber liability insurance. And this fell under some files they took out of the office that was on a USB drive. Anyway, kind of complicated mix, but in order to be protected, for my business owners on the call, look into some cyber liability insurance, because it's great, because ultimately they bought your risk. And whenever you have an incident, call them immediately. Call me next, call me second, but call the cyber liability insurance company, because they have a full team. They know every way that they're going to be attacked from, say, the other attorney in the case, if it's going to get to that. They're going to step in and they're going to really try to protect you. So cyber liability insurance, write that down. Look into that when we get off the call today, because if you don't have it, you're not protected. The types of insurance you have will not protect you.
Well, Philip, that's great, because I just took notes on that myself, because of all the resources we have, I can't recall reading a recommendation on that. So I just learned something today, and I took some notes on that we'll include.
Yeah, everything else you were spot on. I think the documentation, we'll kind of stay on that for a few more minutes, because I think that again, statistically from crime, cyber's way up there, because in a lot of ways they look at it as victimless. Nobody's getting an eye put out. So this type of crime is a lot more rampant from a statistical standpoint. So we can, that's something to think about. One other thing is, you mentioned it, is those policies. We really want to look at the policies, and a lot of times you got to have your employees sign, because it's such a weird world we live in today. The things that we know would be wrong, the onus falls upon the owner of the business, not the employee. So something that anyone, you could go ask a 5-year-old if surfing porn on a company computer is wrong, and they would say, indeed it is. But if you got in court and that you didn't have a document where you had the employee sign that that's wrong, ultimately the liability and the onus is going to fall upon the business and not the employee. So you want to have those policies in place. And you mentioned a disaster recovery plan. I think sometimes people don't do it because they think that's really hard, but the reality is more, you just got to walk through the steps, and you got to just really think and ask a couple of questions as you kind of go through, what needs to be protected, class the assets, data being one type of asset, class the assets, determine the value of them, put measures in place of how you protect them and how you would recover in the event something happened. Not that difficult, but people make it difficult.
And Philip, I would say on your SOPs at the Foley Police Department, we pick several SOPs a month that's required mandatory reading. You can read off on that thing and sign it and put it, put it in on file. Yeah, you've covered yourself there, but are you really getting your employees to remember what the policy says? So we pick a few policies each month, and it's required mandatory reading. In fact, I'm about to go. I'm cutting it close to the end of the month. I've got to go back to the PD today and finish my SOP reading just like everybody else before I get myself in trouble.
That's right. Yeah, it's absolutely, it's everybody's a threat. You mentioned internal, threats, is another thing. I've been on, some situations where, data's been stolen from people using Dropbox. I recommend blocking Dropbox so that people can't use that, because literally, if you got a fast internet connection, I could steal all the data in your business and upload it to my Dropbox account in, minutes, if not hours, and you would never know it even happened. So a lot of measures that, you kind of need to do some exercises, like we talked about, from, training your staff about active shooters to the physical aspect of your business, and what to do in those events, and then even from a cybersecurity. But the security, I'll kind of end with this portion of it. I like to try to keep these about 45 minutes, respecting everyone's time, but a lot of times we have to put it in our rotation to go through and think through these things, like you're talking about, reading a policy, reiterating it during the company meeting or during the huddle, reminding people, because at the end of the day, to be good stewards of what God has given us, we need to be thoughtful of the humans that we have around us, and even the data, the things that can hurt other people. And nothing frustrates me more than going to somebody who is held to standards, to compliance standards, and they want to, basically be like an ostrich with their head in the sand, knowing damn well that they're breaking the rules, and they know they're putting people at risk. And I have such little tolerance for that nowadays. I think it's because I'm getting older, but we really need to be good at looking out for others. I think that's part of being a good business person. I don't know, you can kind of speak to that for a couple more minutes.
Yeah, not only your employees, but your clients. And I will tell you, Denise and I years ago were victims of identity theft. And here I am. I'm a cop. I've got a dozen detectives that I can designate, and we got on that case real quick. And they can almost move faster than you can get to them. By the time we got to them, chased everything down. The apartment they were operating in out of was vacated by then. So, but the personal aspects of that, like you're talking about, it took us quite a while to get our credit stand, not our credit standings, but our credit reports cleaned up from the false information that these criminals had put into under our name so they could further their criminal enterprises. It just took a while to get that cleaned up, and it's just frustrating. And that was, to be honest with you, that was kid stuff back then compared to what I've seen nowadays as a cop. Yeah,
bad stuff out there. Well, at the end of the day, I always think about the time that we spend together. People have been on the call, and really, what should you do next? And I always think that knowledge without action is a lot of times useless. And so I always have this screen on all of our presentations about what should you do next, because you need to do something. And I'm not saying this because you need to call me, because maybe you don't need to call me, but you need to do something, and taking care of the stuff that you got assigned to you is kind of how I look at it. And I'll tell you what we will do is we'll give you a free 4-point cybersecurity audit, as well as free cybersecurity training for all your staff. Totally free, no obligation, no no commitment required. I think that's something that that I want to do to help our community. As a business owner, I've been doing this for almost 19 years, and basically taking money out of our economy. I think it's good to just give back, and it makes me feel good to be able to do that. So, if you guys are interested in this 4-point security audit, I'll come out and do a cybersecurity audit, give you free training, as well as look at, again, I'm trained as a CISSP, which is a Certified Information System Security Professional. So I have the basics on security from a physical aspect, but really when it gets down to access controls and all that stuff, I want to bring in a professional, but we can at least have a second set of eyes on things to take you through some scenarios. I'll be happy to do that for you. And that's really for anybody who's on the webinar. And I tell you, as many people as on here today, I've got that many or more that have wanted the recording of this. I think this is definitely a topic that people are it's on their radar, which I think is great. And I hope that this has been something that's good. We'll also offer that free stuff to these guys that are that have emailed me and said, hey, send that to me. So we'll also offer that. And all I ask is that, don't stretch it out too long, because, just from a time perspective, we'll do that as long as you contact us by the end of the month, and, get you on the schedule over the next few weeks, and, come out and make sure that, we're doing the best that we can with the stuff, the resources that are given. And in order to claim that, all you have to do is go to events, just email events@askbis.com. And I guess we can take a moment here and open it up for questions. If you'll type anything in the chat.
Yes.
The stuff, I guess we do have some questions here. Christy, what you got?
Question number 1, should you have employees practice an active shooter drill, and how?
Yes, you should. That's probably one of the most important things you can do is you can talk about it, and you can have them read policies and all that, but it's not going to come to full fruition until you actually do an active shooter drill. And more and more local police departments will come help you with this. I know we do. We've done it quite a bit. Unfortunately, when there's an active shooter event somewhere in the nation, and especially at a church, we'll get phone calls like that, and we're more than happy to come help walk you through this, because it's difficult. This is difficult turf. It's a difficult thing, but it does happen, and it can happen. It will, and it does happen. So, yeah, your local PDs can help you, and you can call me. My cell phone number is 251-424-0811. Don't call me about tickets. Call me about if you want me to help you. If you don't know where to turn to as far as the active shooting thing, I can put you in the right direction. If it's not in the city of Foley, I can get you some help that way.
We also have another question, David. In Alabama, should we take out an active shooter? What is our liability?
You have I'll answer it like this. You have a right to defend yourself and to defend others. I'll leave it like that. You have a right and you have a need to stop an active shooter to protect yourself and to protect others, whether they're your customers or your employees. You have a right to defend yourself.
Absolutely. We also had another chat come in that said the website for Run, Hide, Fight. David, I know you're going to get that over to us, and we'll send out an email later, probably tomorrow morning, with that link in it, so you can view that video.
Yeah, just run a search on Run, Hide, Fight. You'll bring it up.
Perfect.
It's probably one of the better ones I've seen.
Okay, and we have one last question. Do you report a cyber attack to your local police?
You can report it to the local police. That's a good starting point. Yes, ma'am.
Also, I'll add to that. Also, FBI is they specialize in that. They got an office out of Mobile. Caught me on the spot. I can't remember the guy's name, but I can add that in that email as well. And the good thing is, guys, about this now, you know, the FBI, they call it TARP hitting, which means that anything that happens that they get reported, unless they absolutely, in a court case, have to release that information, they will not. So that anything that is done in that event is done in confidentiality. I think sometimes people don't want to, they don't want to talk about. I mean, every cybersecurity breach that you see happen, there's 100 of them that nobody reports.
That's right. And we have a great partnership in law enforcement of your city, your county, state, and federal partners that work together on a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I think if we were to report it more and get that out there quicker, I really believe that we could we could mitigate that a little bit, because we're seeing a lot more stateside stuff. You know, it's of course harder, I guess, to track these guys internationally, but we're seeing a lot more stateside stuff, and I'd love to take it to those guys and make it to where we could catch some of them and make, put that on the news to kind of mitigate some of our risk. And reporting it is something we need to be doing.
Yeah, and I've only seen it one time where we were actually able to put our hands on them, but it was a scam operation, and we intervened on it and kept the conversation going and said, we're not sending you any more money until we see you in person. And they made a mistake, and now they wouldn't come to Foley, but they agreed to come to Pensacola, and we were there waiting on them. So we actually were able to take that scammer down and physically send him to the Hilton. I shouldn't say Hilton, to the jail.
Yeah, I like it. Cool. Well, David, listen, guys, and I want to thank everybody for taking the time. This is an important matter that we need to think about for sure. And if I can help, I know David, if he can help you, he will help you. Anyway, again, he's a city cop in Foley, and we don't want to have him running all over the county, but I know he's a helpful person, and that's why I wanted to have him on. And so I want to thank everybody. If you have other questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. We'll send that information out that we discussed in an email that you'll get tomorrow. Now, Christy, does everybody get a copy of this recording as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, and we'll get this spun down so that if you want to go back over, maybe you missed something, you can re-listen to it. And again, just want to thank everybody for spending their time with us. Want to thank David especially for taking time out of his busy day to do that, and also want to thank the City of Foley for for allowing us to use these resources to help our community stay safe.
Well, thank you, and I had a great time talking with everybody.
All right, y'all have a great afternoon. We'll talk to you soon.